Hey guys, Ryan here. Tonight we step onto a silent riverbank under a silver Nile moon, and you probably won't survive this if you forget your sandals, but don't worry, everyone else forgot theirs too. Before we settle in, if this resonates with you, hit like and subscribe only if you're here for more of this vibe. Let me know where you're watching from and your local time in the comments. Gently lower the lights, switch on that soothing fan breeze, and come with me as we unwind into tonight's adventure. You stand barefoot on cool sand, the whisper of ancient water lapping at your toes like a lullaby for insomniacs. The breeze carries a faint scent of lotus flowers drifting upstream from a distant temple, while a solitary heron dips in the shallows, its silhouette a living painting against the charcoal sky. Far off, pyramids hungrily absorb moonlight, their stones rumored to hold echoes of Pharaoh's midnight prayers. Historians still argue whether those pyramids were ever scrupulously white or always tinged with desert grime, but tonight they glimmer like forgotten lanterns guiding you onward. Crickets chirp an offbeat rhythm that would make any modern DJ weep with envy. You inhale the cool night air, tasting a hint of dust and barley flour carried across fields, imagining the next few hours devoted not to battle or bureaucracy, but to the humble art of baking bread. Here in ancient Egypt, bread isn't just breakfast, it's lifeblood, tribute, and sometimes even currency. A mainstream fact, daily bread made up roughly half of an average worker's rations, fueling the construction of temples and tombs alike. And right now, you're about to witness why those loaves matter more than gold and jewelry. As your eyes adjust, you catch the glint of small clay granaries perched on dikes above the waterline. Farmers use the lunar calendar, complete with its 30-night cycle, to time planting and harvesting, trusting the moon's phases to balance grain moisture. Some fringe scholars whisper that certain farmers read patterns in sand ripples to predict crop yields, a technique so obscure it makes crop circles look mainstream. You roll your shoulders, ready to trudge toward the first cluster of torchlit farmhouses that dot the riverbank. Between the call of a distant jackal and the soft rustle of palm fronds, you notice dew pearls forming on wheat stalks just beyond the shore. Your footsteps leave temporary imprints that the tide will erase by dawn, a poetic reminder that the Nile's rhythms command everything here. In this hush, you feel the pulse of centuries, every crook of river bend, every star reflecting on the water, every breath you take is layered atop thousands who walked this path before you. You probably won't survive this if you don't brace yourself. The next step leads you toward fields where farmers harvest barley by moonlight. Yes, nighttime agriculture, because daytime heat could bake the grain before it made it to the oven. The cool night air preserves moisture, and those distant lanterns. Simple pottery lamps fueled by animal fat. Technically, fire safety was a challenge, and archaeologists still debate whether lamps were kept some safe distance from straw huts or stuffed directly between bundles of stalks for convenience. You laugh at the thought of barn fire risk in an air-conditioned world. Here, a single stray ember could translate into a village-wide bake sale gone wrong. A soft giggle escapes your lips as you imagine modern health inspectors chasing millennia-old bakery staff for lack of gloves. Instead, these laborers slick their hands with olive oil to prevent dough from sticking, one of many practical hacks that predate silicone spatulas by millennia. Yet, tucked into jars of honey excavated from tombs, archaeologists found residues of medicinal herbs, hinting at borderline alchemical recipes for making bread both nourishing and slightly psychedelic. Historians still argue whether those herb-infused loaves were intended for temple feasts or weekend getaways into the subconscious. Your gaze drifts back to the river, where a small boat drifts by, or silent in water deeper than any urban pool. The boat's prow is shaped like a lotus bud, an emblem of rebirth, they say. In reality, priests used similar vessels to carry offerings at night, believing moonlight purified their voyage. You pinch yourself to check you're not dreaming, certainly one fringe fact too many for any rational mind. And yet here you are, sand underfoot, stars overhead, and the promise of Moonlit Bakery secrets just beyond the horizon. Footsteps crunch behind you, a fellow traveler with a lantern swings it gently, revealing faint hieroglyphs on a low wall. They depict bread-making scenes, workers sifting grain, women forming loaves, priests offering baskets to deities. You lean in, tracing a symbol of the god Osiris, patron of agriculture, whose green skin represented renewal. Mainstream scholars confirm that agrarian cults worshipped Osiris to bless fields each year, ensuring harvests that fed an empire. And you, dear listener, are about to join that timeless ritual. A distant dog barks, perhaps warning of jackals, or just complaining about late-night bakery traffic. You chuckle softly, feeling a cozy camaraderie with those nocturnal workers. Moonlight bathes the land in silver, and you realize that every glint is a promise of warm hearths, ambient murmurs, and the gentle crackle of ovens waiting to spring to life. You shake out your arms, ready to push further into the mystery. The night is young, the Nile is patient, and the first steps of our bakery journey have only just begun. You slip past the last glowing granaries and step into fields where barley stalks sway like pale ghosts in the moonlight, their dewy tips dripping onto your bare ankles. Feel that dampness? It's the life force that keeps grain kernels plump and full of starch, essential for tomorrow's loaf. Historians still argue whether farmers timed their harvest to the exact lunar quarter or simply trusted experience, but tonight's harvesters treat each glimmering stalk as a whispered invitation to greet dawn with baskets laden. As you trudge forward, the hush deepens. Your sandals, if you remembered them, would squeak on packed earth, but bare feet grant you a silent passage. You're the midnight guest of nocturnal harvesters. Mainstream experts estimate that barley comprised nearly 75% of all grain grown in ancient Egypt, fueling armies and artisans alike. Yet here, beneath a tapestry of stars, you glimpse why this grain mattered more than compounded interest in illicit grain trade. Your hand brushes against a stalk, dislodging a droplet that splashes onto your palm. Remember those dew pearls you spotted by the Nile? This is their field cousin. You cup the droplet and taste it. It's impossibly pure, like filtered mountain air sneaking south. Fringe accounts mention that some farmers believed dew carried blessings from Atha, goddess of fertility, and would deliberately delay sunrise harvesting so dew might kiss every ear. Scholars still debate whether such rituals were widespread or the private whimsy of temple estates. Ahead, you sense torchlight reflecting off polished sickles, curved bronze blades with wooden handles smooth as driftwood. You join a small crew, each poised to slash through dense barley like a choreographed dance. You mimic their stance, 1 foot forward, back arched, blade angled just so. A gentle snick echoes as barley falls in tidy bundles. It's mesmerizing, almost meditative, and strangely soothing. No wonder later pharaohs used manual labor as a form of royal spa retreat. The harvesters move in waves, hushed chants threading through their work. You catch snippets of ancient hymn fragments praising the Nile's generosity, probably borrowed from temple ceremonies. Fringe historians suggest these chants doubled as mnemonic devices for grain quality inspection, melody keyed to whether kernels sang when shaken. Historians still argue whether these songs originated in peasant communities or were assigned by priestly scribes. You help tie a bundle, looping palm fiber rope with practiced ease. Feel the texture, rough against your palms, yet oddly comforting. The rope originates from date palms grown along irrigation canals, another fact often overlooked. Most accounts focus on grain, but date fiber cordage formed the backbone of agricultural tech, literally binding harvests together. A sudden breeze rustles stalks around you. The silhouetted fields ripple like a silver ocean. Your breath catches, you're afloat on an ephemeral sea of barley, your body syncing with rhythms older than pyramids. Nearby, a family of ibis flies overhead, bird of Thoth, scribe of gods, perhaps drawn by grain's soft glow. Mainstream archaeology notes ibis bones at granary sites, implying birds scavenged fallen kernels. Some fringe tales claim farmers trained ibises to peck poor-quality grains, pruning harvests naturally. Scholars still debate if such training was intentional or mere myth. Your muscles pulse with gentle exertion, knees bending, back stooping, reminiscent of modern Pilates, but with better views. You stifle a chuckle imagining CrossFit enthusiasts trading barbells for barley bundles. Yet this labor released endorphins those ancient bodies felt without knowing the term. And you're feeling them now, calm, slightly drowsy, yet oddly invigorated. Torch flames flicker, casting dancing shadows on fields that stretch to the horizon. You pause to sip from a water skin, its contents taste faintly of clay from the Nile banks. That clay-lined vessel, known as a bitumen-sealed jar, kept water cool through centuries. You swallow, savoring how chilled liquid soothes exerted muscles. Modern sports drinks could learn a thing or two here. Back in the bundle line, hushed conversation drifts like smoke. You overhear one harvester whisper about an upcoming feast honoring Osiris, where barley bread will flow like wine. Fringe records mention barley beer as ritual libation, so perhaps this barley will star in both loaf and pint. Historians still argue whether beer preceded bread or vice versa, but here under moonlight it matters little. Both craftsmen and celebrants will sleep easy, tethered by grain's embrace. Suddenly, you step on a loose pebble. The crackle snaps the air, and a ripple of hush spreads among workers. In the silence, you sense the field listening, barley blades still, crickets distant. You breathe out, realizing how alive this landscape feels at night, each particle vibrating with history. A harvester brushes flour dust from their tunic sleeve and offers you a handful of barley grains to inspect. You feel their smooth, oblong shape, a tactile connection to ancient crafts. You sway gently, rocking on your heels, lulled by the rhythmic bundling all around. Soon, a low drumbeat begins, ritual musicians concealed among date palms. The cadence guides the harvest, uniting labor with ceremony. You close your eyes, perceiving how sound blurs time, how drums and barley-scented air coax you deeper into relaxation. In this moment, amid dewy barley and lullaby drums, you sense that every grain harvested tonight will become more than bread. It is a vessel of stories, of gods and farmers, of moonlight and melody. And you, dear listener, are as much a part of this harvest as any ancient apprentice with leather sandals and bronze sickle. You slip away from the harvest field and follow a narrow path of compacted earth toward a cluster of low huts where torchlight flickers against stacked milling stones. The air here is thick with the tang of freshly cracked grain dust, and you inhale deeply, imagine that scent lingering on your pillow. Historians still argue whether these massive millstones were quarried locally or imported from distant quarries, but tonight you'll feel their weight beneath your fingertips. Stepping into the open-air mill, you feel the ground tilting slightly underfoot, sloping toward a central pit where a round saddle stone rests atop a larger base. A pair of oxen, their coats shimmering faintly in torch glow, slowly circle around a post, dragging a horizontal beam that turns the saddle back and forth. You imagine this rhythmic movement as an ancient meditation, wood creaking, stone grinding, the murmured lowing of beasts. It's astonishingly soothing, better than any white noise machine you've considered buying online. A miller, clad in a simple linen kilt, kneels beside the saddle. He scoops a handful of barley bundles, some still harboring dew pearls from earlier, into a channel carved in the top stone. You watch grains funnel between stones, crushed to a coarse meal that trickles into waiting baskets. A mainstream fact, such saddle querns date back to at least the Old Kingdom and were crucial kitchen tools for millennia. Yet scholars still argue whether two-stone or rotary mills became the norm first, a debate more heated than any modern tech rivalry. You crouch next to the miller and run your hand through the coarse flour that coats the base stone. It feels like fine sand, soft and slightly clingy. Fringe archaeologists claim that some millers mixed aromatic resins into the grooves to infuse flour with subtle fragrances, creating unique temple offerings. You sniff skeptically, half expecting hints of frankincense, but detect only the pure, earthy aroma of barley and quartz. The oxen lumber on, their hooves thudding in steady cadence. You place your palm against the beam to feel the silent power transferring from muscle through wood to stone. It's a tactile connection to lives long past, each revolution echoing footsteps of workers who built pyramids and punked pharaohs with bread puns you can't translate. You let the motion lull you, counting rotations like a sleepy yogi counting breaths. Nearby, another mill stands, this one larger, with a vertical stone wheel turned by human hand via a wooden axle. Two women push and pull, their tunics brushing dust from the path, swapping jokes in hushed tones about who'll get to dip the next spoon into the flour chaff. Fringe sources suggest some millers even trained cats to nip at mice hiding in grain sacks, a primitive pest control. Historians still argue whether domestic animals truly assisted food production or simply scavenged leftovers. You join the women, gripping the axle as they guide the stone's weight. Your shoulders burn gently, a reminder that even simple tasks demand strength. You smile at their encouraging nods as they point out uneven grooves on the stone, remnants of ancient repairs. They chip away imperfections with bronze chisels, a blend of craftsmanship and improvisation you'd appreciate if you weren't too busy nodding like a bobblehead in a lullaby concert. A soft chorus of nocturnal insects underscores the stone's grinding, creating an ASMR symphony that would trend on tranquil playlists if uploaded today. You lean in to catch every nuance, the scrape of grain, the sigh of air between worn edges, the faint clink of spare stone stored against a hut wall. Memories of barley dew and drumbeats blend into this new layer of auditory comfort, wrapping you in an ancestral lullaby. Suddenly, a breeze sweeps through, scattering flour dust into dancing motes that sparkle in torchlight like suspended fireflies. You watch them drift, your mind calming as if coaxed by unseen hands. The mill's breeze carries stories, travelers who carried flour sacks upriver, soldiers who paused here before desert patrols, children who snuck grain kernels to chew sweetly during midday sun. You scoop a pinch of freshly ground flour, rubbing it between your fingers. It feels luxurious, almost like a spa mask you'd try if spa masks came with a warning about edge chippings. You inhale its nutty aroma, then taste a fleck, crisp, earthy, with a whisper of sweetness. This matter-of-fact taste anchors you, reminding you that every loaf will start right here. The torch-bearing apprentice kneels beside you and points to a chipped stone, a small carved symbol of Anubis, the jackal-headed god overseeing the afterlife. We mark stones to bless the bread for travelers, the apprentice whispers. Fringe tales claim that hidden symbols warded off mice and satyrs alike, though historians still argue whether apotropaic engravings were practical or purely decorative. You trace the carving, feeling the groove cool against your fingertip. Flickering torches reveal the mill's peripheral details, woven baskets brimming with flour, water skins resting on woven reed mats, and a small clay jar, residue of honey dissolved in oil, used by bakers to coat their hands. You recall the olive oil hack from Harvest Night, a theme weaving through each stage of bread's journey. These tactile callbacks knit sections of your mental storybook into one seamless tapestry. A distant owl hoots, as if punctuating a sentence you missed. You rise to your feet, stretching muscles that learned new motions tonight. The millstones still grind, the oxen's lowing hums, women's laughter drifts. You feel a gentle drowsiness cradling you, like floating in the Nile's current. Yet, there's more to come, oven fires awaiting, dough to knead, embers to coax. You step back, offering the apprentice a respectful nod. The torchlight dances over your features, casting your shadow long and wavering across the grit-strewn floor. You're part of this living tableau now, a sleepy apprentice of ancient mechanics, riding waves of grain dust and moonlit murmurs. The milling floor's ambient seeps into your bones, a tranquil knowledge that every revolution of stone transforms simple grain into something greater. Behind you, the narrow path back to the bakery courtyard glows faintly. You take a final glance at the mill, a place of grinding rhythms and shared labor, as if committing it to memory, a scene to revisit whenever sleep eludes you. With one last breath of dust-laced air, you turn, ready to follow those flickering lights toward the next step, sacred dough preparations. You emerge into a courtyard where torchlight pools around a low wooden table dusted with flour, the surface worn smooth by centuries of kneading. Here, the air is pungent with a harmonious blend of barley meal, emmer wheat, and sticky honey, like an ancient spa treatment you never knew you needed. Historians still argue whether emmer or barley was the bakery's star grain, but tonight you'll see both in action. A lean baker in a linen shift invites you forward. His hands, glistening with oil, scoop a mound of coarse emmer flour into a hollowed stone basin. You step closer, feeling the basin's chill seep into your fingertips. Fringe manuscripts hint that some dough was blessed with drops of lotus extract to soothe the body. Mainstream archaeologists confirm that honey was the primary sweetener, prized both for flavor and preservation. You press your palm into the flour, sending a small cloud drifting upward like tiny sand dunes in slow motion. The baker tips in water from a bitumen-sealed jar, its clay walls still cool, condensation beading like dew on a papyrus leaf. You grab the water jar, feeling its weight, imagining the potter's hand shaping it at the Nile's edge. A scholar's debate lingers about whether jars were fired at palace kilns or local workshops, but tonight, you don't mind. Next, the baker streams in honey, amber ribbons pooling in the flour. You dip a finger, tasting the thick sweetness. It's floral with an undercurrent of date palm, reminiscent of morning sunshine. He winks. This is the same honey Pharaoh favored at dawn. You probably won't survive this if you don't appreciate the nuance, but tonight, you're worthy of tasting pharaonic indulgence. With practiced ease, he begins folding the mixture, turning dry edges inward as water seeps into every kernel fragment. You mimic his movements, palms flatten, fingers curl, dough stretches and recoils like a living thing. The rhythm is hypnotic, your heartbeat sinking to each press. Fringe scribes claimed that bakers whispered prayers to Khnum, god of creation, believing he molded the first humans from clay. Mainstream texts note after dough rituals included prostrations before golden idols. You choose to fold without worship, though a silent nod to Khnum twitches in your mind. The dough gains elasticity. You feel it resist, then yield under your touch, a sensual feedback loop that's softer than any memory foam mattress. Your forearms flex, and you relish the gentle burn, a reminder that every loaf is born of labor. A scratchy laugh escapes you as you imagine modern gym bros swapping protein shakes for barley dough workouts. As the mixture smooths, the baker sprinkles in scented herbs, dried coriander and caraway, yielding a subtle earthiness. Historians still argue whether these spices were purely culinary or held ritual significance, but you inhale the aroma and let the scent lull you. Fringe stories propose that shepherd bakers infused dough with crushed lotus petals on solstice nights, aiming to induce joyous dreams. You chuckle, sensing your own eyelids growing heavy at the mere suggestion. Together you shape the dough into oval loaves, each roughly the size of a modern dinner plate. The baker's hands guide yours, thumbs pressing indentations along the surface, both decorative and functional, allowing heat to penetrate evenly. A mainstream fact, these indentations, called bread eyes, helped control crumb texture. The pattern feels oddly like Braille for bread, a hidden language you're eager to decode in dreams. You roll a smaller piece of dough into a ring and set it aside. The baker explains this is the staff bread, marked for temple offerings. Fringe theory suggests rings represent the cyclical nature of the Nile, death and rebirth entwined. Scholars still debate if ring bread dates to the Old Kingdom or arose later during the New Kingdom baker's renaissance. You study the shape, imagining it floating off an offering barge toward waiting deities. Now comes the fun part. You tuck a handful of roasted chickpeas into the ring center, their golden shells crisping your fingers. The baker smiles at your design, clapping his hands in approval, almost like a parent watching a messy toddler's first art project. You grin back, proud of this miniature offering. A cool breeze drifts through, carrying distant drumming from the harvest fields, a callback to drums you heard earlier. The overlapping rhythms of labor and ceremony stitch together tonight's tapestry, reminding you that production and worship walked hand in hand. As you adjust your stance, you feel the warmth of earlier torches tingling on your neck, the courtyard alive with flickering light and hushed anticipation. You pause to watch another baker press his thumbs into dough dotted with sesame seeds. Later medieval travelers would call these Egyptian bagels, but here they're simply practical. Seeds prevent sticking and hint at texture. Historians still argue whether sesame was native to Africa or brought by Arabian traders. Modern sesame lovers simply rejoice. Fringe reports claim some bakers coated loaves in date molasses before baking, creating caramelized crusts, though mainstream ovens may have burned sugar, so the practice's prevalence remains debated. Your dough sits gently in a basket lined with palm fronds. You lean forward, inhaling deeply. The fragrance is layered, honey sweetness, grains earthiness, spices whisper, palm fresh green notes. It envelops you like a weighted blanket, coaxing tension from your shoulders. Before the loaves venture into the oven, the baker raises his hand skyward, murmuring a short benediction to Renenutit, goddess of nourishment and good fortune. You probably won't survive this if you don't share in that moment, so you raise yours too, though silently, letting the ritual's calm wash over you. The courtyard grows quieter as dough rests, a palpable hush settling like dust. You stretch out your arms, recalling the mill's grind and the field's cradle, feeling the dough's potential vibrating beneath its skin. In ancient Egypt, the act of bread making was both practical necessity and symbolic alchemy. Historians still argue about the precise hours dough needed to prove. You nod in agreement that time, like the Nile, cannot be rushed. With one last glance at the basket, you step back, ready for the next chapter, firing hidden clay ovens in this sacred space, coaxing heat and flame to breathe life into your handcrafted loaves. The courtyard's torchlight dims as bakers drift away, leaving you in expectant silence. You follow a narrow, flagstone-paved alleyway toward a hidden courtyard where half-buried clay ovens stand like earthen sentinels. The oven's dome tops peak above packed earth, their stony mouths yawning wide and dark. Here, in this hushed enclave, you become the steward of fire, tasked with coaxing flames to life in vessels that will transform dough into warm sustenance. Historians still argue whether Egyptian bakers introduced bell-shaped domes or inherited them from Mesopotamian prototypes, but tonight, you're about to illuminate that debate with crackle and glow. The chief baker hands you a bundle of dried palm fronds and a handful of slender reeds. "These are your kindling," he murmurs, voice low as the embers he'll soon feed. You kneel before the oven's blackened mouth, the surrounding walls stained by centuries of smoke. The faint scent of charred resin drifts through the air, a reminder that resinous woods were prized not only for warmth but for aromatic qualities. Fringe recorders claim some ovens use datewood for sweet-smelling smoke, yet mainstream digs show charcoal remained the top choice for consistent heat. You arrange the fronds and reeds into a loose teepee formation inside the oven's belly, then crouch back and strike flint against chert. Sparks scatter, tiny stars rekindled in this subterranean chamber. A whoosh of air draws at the embers as you guide the first flickers into tongue-like flames. You probably won't survive this if you can't resist staring. The glow jumps and dances, casting macabre shapes that seem to flicker like hieroglyphic spirits. Yet the moment feels oddly like home, a primal memory unlocked in your chest. Once the flames take hold, you slide in a flat paddle and fan air through a small hole at the oven's base, coaxing heat to spread. The temperature climbs quickly, you feel it as a flush across your cheeks and forehead. A mainstream fact: Egyptian ovens often reach temperatures near 450 degrees Fahrenheit 230 degrees Celsius, suitable for crisp crusts and tender interiors. Still, bakers wielded tools, long-handled paddles and bellows made of animal hide, to regulate heat, an art perfected over generations. You step back to let the blaze settle into a bed of glowing coals. The oven walls radiate warmth that makes the chilly night air feel like a soft blanket against your skin. A fringe anecdote suggests bakers once painted interior walls with a clay and milk slurry to improve heat retention, but scholars still argue whether traces of organic residue are deliberate or accidental. You lean in, running your hand just above the oven's dome, feeling the stones hum with stored energy. Nearby, another baker pours a handful of pebbles into a ceramic jar. When heated, these oven stones crackle and hiss, distributing heat evenly. You suppress a giggle at the idea of an ancient version of microwave popcorn, though the purpose here is far more refined. The jar is then tucked into a side chamber, a subtle hack that echoes in modern pizza ovens with their steaming stones. The courtyard is awash in warm light. Shadows of palm leaves drift across the walls, and you catch glimpses of earlier loaves, rounded and slitted, resting on woven reed mats beside the ovens. Their tops already show soft signs of rising, proof to perfection before baking. You recall the baker's whispered benediction to renenute it. Now you see the reverence reflected in this tender space filled with anticipation. The chief baker invites you to help load your ring loaf. You slide it carefully onto a long-handled peel, the dough cool and supple. He nods, signaling you to open the oven door. The embrace of heat blurs your vision for a moment, an incandescent mouth welcoming its offering. You insert the paddle, gently nudging the loaf deeper until it nestles atop glowing coals, then withdraw, sealing the door with a swipe of dust as snuff air leaks. The slap of the oven door echoes like a heartbeat, and you step back, arms crossed, watching as flames lick at the loaf's edges. A chorus of crackles rises, interwoven with distant night sounds, a jackal's cry, the soft murmur of the Nile, and the steady drip of water from a high basin. You close your eyes, leaning into the warmth, letting your eyelids flutter as the scent of baking bread drifts over you. Another baker demonstrates how to carve gentle vents in a larger loaf, using a short blade to score deep grooves. These vents encourage steam to escape, shaping the crust's final texture. Historians still argue whether vent patterns held symbolic meaning or were purely functional. You choose to believe each slash was a secret message to future generations. Fringe tales say shapes mimicked constellations, though mainstream scholars suspect pragmatic origins. Nearby, a small pile of discarded crusts, crusty minor, awaits sorting. These edge pieces were given to workers or used for crumb offerings at temple altars. You pick one up, it's firm, almost cracker-like, flecked with sesame seeds and honey glaze. You snap off a corner and taste it, crisp, slightly sweet, with a toasted depth that modern sourdough aficionados would envy. The crunch echoes in the silence, a timely ASMR moment that sends a shiver down your spine. Time stretches as you monitor the bake. The glow shifts from orange to ember red, then softens to a subdued gold as the coals settle. You wipe sweat from your brow, the oven's heat both invigorating and hypnotic. A fringe suggestion claims bakers whispered lullabies to dough, imbuing each loaf with restful energy. You hum a simple melody, an ancient lullaby you've never heard but feel deep in your bones. The chief baker peeks inside, nodding in approval. He demonstrates the tap test, knocking the crust with knuckles to listen for a hollow ring. You try it, tap, tap, and the loaf responds with a resonant echo like a temple gong. A mainstream fact, this technique persists in bakeries worldwide, unchanged by time. You grin, feeling connected to kneaders and bakers across millennia. As the temperature drops, you pull the loaf out, tucking it against your chest to warm your hands. The ring shape feels symbolic, an unbroken circle, a promise fulfilled. The baker offers you a fresh loaf slice, steam drifts upward, lifting your cheeks in a quiet smile. You bite down, soft crumb yields under your teeth, releasing a gentle cascade of warmth and flavor that settles in your belly like a cozy hearth. A final exhale ripples through the courtyard. The ovens glow faintly, embers murmuring their last echoes. You step away, satisfied, both participant and witness to a ritual as old as civilization itself. The warmth lingers in your palms as you ready yourself for the next phase, fragrant bread at dawn, when the first rays will crown your creations. You wander back toward the riverbank courtyard just as the first pale fingers of dawn touch the horizon, softening the night's charcoal into muted lavender. In the cool pre-sunrise air, you approach loaves arranged on woven reed mats, their surfaces still steaming in the gentle breeze. You inhale deeply, catching the aroma of baked grain mingled with honey's sweet residue, an ambrosial perfume that eases any lingering duskiness from your mind. Historians still argue whether early Egyptians prized morning bread over evening fare, but here, at dawn's hush, the first loaves taste like revelation. A baker, groggy-eyed yet practiced, lifts a steaming oval loaf and slices it with a flint blade, its edge honed sharper than any modern kitchen knife. You watch as crumbs scatter like golden confetti, each fragment reflecting subtle hues of amber and ivory. Mainstream records note that these early slices fueled laborious building temples before sunrise. Today, you're about to savor that very fuel, tasting history in each tender crumb. You reach forward to accept a slice, feeling warmth radiate through your fingertips. The crumb is airy yet structured, with tiny uniform holes, a testament to skilled fermentation. Fringe archaeologists propose that ancient bakers harnessed wild yeasts from date palms rather than communal starters, creating diverse loaves across regions. Scholars still debate how standardized Egypt's sourdough cultures really were, but in this moment, you taste a loaf undeniably of its place and time. You press the slice to your lips and bite down. The crust yields with a soft crackle, giving way to a pillowy interior that cradles the breathiest hint of honey sweetness. You close your eyes, letting the flavors swirl, earthbound barley, faint citrus tang from coriander seeds, and an echo of dawn itself. A soft laugh escapes as you imagine modern influencers draping these slices against porcelain plates for Instagram. Here, the loaf's glory is simply in its sustenance. Reaching for a small clay cup, you sip water infused overnight with mint and fig leaves, a primitive infusion aimed at aiding digestion and quelling sunrise nerves. Mainstream texts confirm Egyptians prized herb-infused waters for health, and fringe scrolls mention they sometimes added crushed laurel for a tingle like today's sparkling tonics. You roll the liquid on your tongue, feeling a cool caress before swallowing, your throat slick as boat oil gliding across the Nile. Behind you, a group of workers gathers around a low brazier where embers still glow. They dip bread chunks into shallow bowls of date syrup sauce, painting each bite with rich sweetness. You join the ritual, swirling your slice until it shimmers like sunrise on water. Historians still argue whether drizzled syrup was a daily treat or reserved for festival mornings, but every dab feels like a gentle reward for your nocturnal labor. Seated on a reed mat, you watch village elders arrive, stooped figures cradling baskets of figs and pomegranates. They exchange bread for fruit, trading staples across social lines. Mainstream sources note that bread and fruit barter underpinned local economies. Fringe studies claim some elders recited poetic couplets with each exchange, believing verse-blessed transactions. You overhear fragments of rhyme, lyrical and soft, echoing like half-remembered lullabies. A child tugs at your sleeve, offering a handful of crisp crusts, the crusty miner from last night's bake. You take a piece, its texture like a thin wafer, and nibble slowly, enjoying the contrast between brittle crust and soft crumb. You notice the child's eyes sparkle under receding torchlight, a reminder that even the youngest participated in this communal dawn feast. The sky brightens in gradients of rose and gold. You lean back, propping yourself on one elbow, and survey the scene, workers munching quietly, elders exchanging pleasantries, the river gleaming softly beyond them. You reach into your cloak for a small pouch of frankincense resin and drop a few granules into the brazier's embers. A tendril of sweet, smoky incense curls skyward, an offering to any listening spirits. Fringe rituals vary by locale, but mainstream priests recorded incense use in morning rites to cleanse both people and place. You breathe in the incense-laced air, feeling the scent bridge earth and sky. The mingled aromas of bread, syrup, herbs, and smoke create an invisible tapestry that wraps around your senses. A lone fisherman pushes off in his papyrus skiff, his oars dipping rhythmically into the river as he heads toward morning nets. The oars whisper against water blends with distant bird calls, composing a soundscape that soothes and centers you. Eventually, the baker beckons you to stand. He produces a slender reed board and demonstrates a simple morning exercise, pressing bread slices against it to create bread fans for cooling hot water. You mimic the motion, feeling the reed's ridges press indentations into soft crumb, a functional art form. Historians still argue whether such tools were common across Egypt or bespoke to this riverside village, but you find it delightfully ingenious. The village's daily rhythms wake slowly around you. Smoke from hearth fires rises in lazy spirals, dogs stretch and yawn, women in linen shifts gather water for midday chores. You stand amid these scenes, slice in hand, and realize that fragrant morning bread rituals bound this community together, marrying sustenance and ceremony. As the sun peaks above the river's horizon, painting the sky in brilliant hues, you take one last bite, a final warm crumb dissolving on your tongue like a promise. You tuck the edge of your cloak around your shoulders, savoring the peaceful hush before bustling daybreak. With dawn's glow illuminating your path, you prepare to glimpse the hidden lives of bakery workers, unseen stories waiting just beyond the morning light. You trail behind the earliest bakery workers as they disperse from the dawn feast, heading toward a dwelling tucked between palm groves. Their chatter is low and intimate, snippets of gossip about livestock, dreams of the upcoming Nile flood, and the occasional joke about jackals stealing unattended flatbreads. You slip into the quiet courtyard behind them, where wooden benches and woven mats huddle beneath date palms. This is their private domain, a calm after the fragrant storm of baking. Historians still argue whether bakeries doubled as social halls, but tonight you're witness to their hidden lives. A group of women gather around a stone basin filled with cool water and strips of linen, makeshift wash stations. You watch as they scrub flour from their hands and forearms, using crushed pomegranate rind as a natural exfoliant. Fringe herbalists claim the rinds doubled as antiseptic ointments, though mainstream texts suggest their primary use was dyeing cloth. You rub your own wrists experimentally, feeling the fresh sting of citrus-like tang, and laugh softly at how modern spa treatments echo these ancient hacks. Nearby, a man sorts through a pile of torn burlap sacks, each once brimming with grain, and repurposes them as coarse aprons. You recall the mill's dust and field stalks, these sacks wear their history like badges of honor. A fringe tale hints that early bakers threaded charms into apron seams to ward off sourdough spirits, though scholars still debate if superstitions migrated with grain traders or arose locally. Seated on a low bench, an older baker cradles a clay pipe dripping with honeyed date wine. He takes a slow puff, passing the pipe to a colleague who exhales a gentle plume that smells faintly of figures. Mainstream sources confirm date wine was both a celebratory libation and a casual social lubricant among laborers. The pipe's bowl, carved from alabaster, bears scenes of Osiris's resurrection, a subtle reminder of bread's spiritual ties. You accept a cautious sip of wine, its sweetness coating your tongue like liquid gold. As you settle, a young apprentice reveals a hidden corner stacked with scroll fragments, recipes and personal notes penned in ink that's faded to brown. You lean forward to read a margin note, mix honey and salt during full moon for best rise. Historians still argue if lunar baking rules were widespread or scribal eccentricities. You tuck the thought away, imagining this scribbled advice passed between apprentices like secret passwords. The chatter shifts to family matters. One baker's daughter will marry at the next grain festival, another dreams of opening her own stand by the river. You listen as they debate dowries measured in jars of honey and loaves rather than jewelry. Fringe anthropologists suggest bread-laid offerings sealed marriage contracts, but mainstream scholars find scant evidence. You smile at their domestic rhetoric. You might have left your own village for this nocturnal journey, yet here you feel a warm sense of community. Overhead, palm fronds whisper in a gentle breeze, their shadows flickering across clay walls adorned with faded murals. You stand to examine one depicting women stirring giant pots, likely for communal bread soups. The mural's colors, ochre, indigo, and dye from crushed beetles, still breathe life into the scene. Fringe pigment experts argue if certain reds came from imported minerals or local clays. Scholars still debate trade routes' true complexity. You trace a finger along a painted swirl, feeling connected to ancient artistry. A younger baker demonstrates a quirky superstition, placing a small pebble under the doorpost to keep the oven's fire alive in dreams. You raise an eyebrow as he explains that if dreams faltered, the oven spirit might slip away. Historians still argue if dream incubation was an elite ritual or a folk practice. You tuck the pebble into your palm, a tactile reminder that in Egypt, work and myth danced hand in hand. A pair of women uncoil a length of papyrus rope, weaving it into small baskets for carrying leftover crusts to neighbors. You kneel to help, feeling the papyrus fiber's slick texture under your fingers. Mainstream accounts note papyrus weaving was widespread, producing boats and baskets alike. Fringe researchers propose certain basket patterns encoded secret messages among guilds. You weave a simple one, knotting corners with deliberate care, imagining messages whispered in reed code. Later, a baker's mother arrives, her face etched with flour-white lines from years of dough work. She carries a woven tray of china clay mixed with water, used to soothe aching hands after kneading. You watch as she dips fingers into the cool slurry, then rubs hands in circular motions. Fringe healers claim the clay drawn from specific riverbanks was especially therapeutic. Mainstream studies confirm clay's mild antiseptic properties. You join her, feeling your skin tighten and soothe under her gentle guidance. The courtyard hums with life. A child giggles as she chases a small lizard across the stone floor. A cat curls around a baker's sandal, purring in contentment. You sit back, leaning against a wooden post that creaks softly under your weight. Here in this hidden realm, you sense bakery workers not just as laborious but as a family, whole lives woven between loaves and ovens. The call to assemble echoes, a rhythmic knock on the courtyard gate. The master baker steps forward, signaling an end to leisure. You rise, brushing straw from your tunic, feeling the snug embrace of community warmth. Before you leave, the mother presses a small cloth bundle into your hands. It contains leftover dough, preserved with honey for tomorrow's breakfast. This gift feels intimate, a blessing and breadcrumb trail for your return. You tuck the bundle into your cloak and offer heartfelt thanks. The courtyard falls silent as workers disperse toward their tasks, refining ovens, fetching water, and prepping new dough. You pause at the gate, turning for one last glance. Shadows dance across walls, weaving stories you'll carry into sleep. With a final nod, you step through the gate, bundle in hand, guided by the golden light of a rising sun. Ahead lies the next segment, the spiritual heartbeat of bread making, where cultural rituals and divine offerings converge in smoke and song. You walk on, comforted by the bakery's hidden lives and eager for the loom of divine significance to unfold. You arrive at the temple precinct just as smoke tendrils curl skyward from a row of low braziers, each tended by young apprentices in crisp white kilts. The earthy scent of incense mingles with the lingering aroma of baking, a fragrant tapestry that whispers of offerings and devotion. You step onto a stone walkway patterned with lotus and papyrus motifs, feeling the cool marble under your sandals. Historians still argue whether bread offerings preceded libations or vice versa, but here, amid temple hush, you witness their union. A priestess with coal-lined eyes welcomes you, guiding your gaze to a carved alcove filled with neatly stacked loaves. Each loaf bears an impressed stamp of Anubis or Atha, marking them for specific deities. A mainstream fact, bread offerings formed a crucial element of daily temple rituals, sustaining the gods much like workers sustained with rations. Fringe texts claim bakers once performed secret midnight rites, whispering the gods' names into dough to imbue it with divine favor, though scholars still debate whether this practice reached beyond select temple bakeries. You kneel beside the loaves, running your fingertips across their crisp crusts. The textures vary, some are smooth ovals slashed with 3 precise cuts, others ring-shaped with braided edges. You trace the stamped symbols, Anubis' jackal head, a ceremonial flair reminding worshippers of his afterlife guardianship. The priestess explains that each loaf's shape, size, and stamp corresponded to offerings during morning, noon, and evening prayers. You probably won't survive this if you overlook how meticulous these preparations were, each detail carried cosmic weight. Moving deeper into the courtyard, you pass an incense burner heaped with frankincense and myrrh. The coals glow red-hot, releasing sweet, resinous smoke that drifts over a shallow pool of water inlaid with turquoise chips. Fringe ritual manuals describe the pool as a symbolic Nile, reflecting smoke upward to aid prayers in rising to the heavens. Mainstream scholarship notes similar water features in temples across the Mediterranean, suggesting cultural exchange. Scholars still argue how much Egyptian ritual influenced neighboring regions versus independent development. You approach a low altar where a trio of priest apprentices arranges bread loaves in concentric patterns around miniature statues of deities. A hush falls as they chant rhythmic verses in Middle Egyptian, soft cadences that feel like gentle waves. You lean closer, catching fragments, "May this offering nourish your breath and bestow abundance upon our fields." Fringe linguists suggest certain chant variations contain hidden acrostics conveying secret blessings. Mainstream Egyptologists remain skeptical, citing fragmentary inscriptions. The priestess beckons you to place a ring loaf before a statuette of Osiris draped in green linen. You lift it carefully, the weight reassuring in your palms. Placing it at Osiris's feet, you feel a strange lift in spirit, as if unseen hands propel a silent prayer upward. Then, you step back, inhaling the layered scents of past ceremonies, burnt wood, spiced oils, and sacred bread. Nearby, apprentices pound small clay drums, their low pulse syncing with distant temple bells. The rhythmic beat echoes the Nile's flow and the warm heartbeat of creation. Fringe ethnographers posit these drums mimic the god Atum's primordial heartbeat. Scholars still debate if drum patterns varied by season or remained constant year-round. You close your eyes, letting the cadence cradle you like a mother's rocking. Overhead, the rising sun breaks through ornate lattice screens, casting geometric shadows that dance across the stone floor. You see how the light plays through columns carved with hieroglyphs describing pharaohs' deeds, records that legitimize their rule and bind bread offerings to royal piety. A mainstream observation, pharaohs often endowed temple bakeries to ensure perpetuity of offerings after death. Some fringe historians argue that private baker families held de facto power behind the scenes, leveraging their control over sacred bread. Mainstream scholars counter that such influence was minimal compared to priestly hierarchies. A tall apprentice invites you to help sprinkle barley grains over a loaf surface, symbolizing renewal and abundance. You dip your fingers into a basket, feeling the kernel's cool hardness before letting them cascade like a golden waterfall. The grains scatter across the loaf, nestling into indentations, a tactile callback to the bread eyes you formed earlier. You glance at the priestess, who nods approval, a subtle recognition that you now partake in these time-honored rites. As the ceremony reaches its apex, the chief priest lights small oil lamps and places them before each offering. The steady glow illuminates the loaves, making their crusts appear gilded. You probably won't survive this without appreciating the sanctity of light in Egyptian ritual, fire as both purifier and guide. Fringe analyses posit that flame color signify divine mood, with blue-tinted flames indicating favor. Mainstream scholars find little evidence beyond poetic descriptions. You watch in rapt silence as priests step back, their hands raised in unison, voices rising in a final benediction. The air vibrates with sacred resonance, and you feel your pulse slow, each beat syncing with ancient traditions flowing through limestone veins beneath your feet. When the chanting subsides, the priestess offers you a small bread fragment, an allowed spoil that mortals could consume. You accept it like sacramental communion, tasting the faintest hint of oil and herb, blessed by divine presence. The flavor is ineffably calm, an echo of temple serenity imprinted on your tongue. With the rite complete, you rise, basking in residual incense haze and soft drum echoes. The temple courtyard feels both massive and intimate, an architectural womb cradling community, faith, and sustenance. You step away, cradling the memory of hot loaves and whispered prayers, weaving them into the tapestry of your own experience. Ahead lies the scholars' debate on Egypt's earliest ovens, clashing theories of introduction, evolution, and cultural exchange. You walk forward, eager to weigh these competing narratives, knowing that each step further cements your place in an ever-unfolding story. You emerge from the temple precinct's golden hush into the cool twilight of scholarly inquiry, where torchlit scroll tables stand in the shadow of soaring columns. Here, within a modest alcove lined with papyrus rolls, Egypt's greatest minds gather, scribes, temple historians, and occasional foreign envoys, each eager to unravel a long-standing mystery, the origin and evolution of the kingdom's earliest bread ovens. Historians still argue whether bell-shaped domes arrived with Mesopotamian artisans or developed independently along the Nile, and tonight you inhabit the center of that debate. You slip into a carved wooden chair beside a long stone bench. Before you lie 3 scrolls, one detailing oven designs from the Old Kingdom, another describing innovations in the Middle Kingdom, and a third, a fragmentary foreign account referencing a fire-breathing clay beast used for baking. A mainstream fact, the earliest Egyptian ovens date back to around 2500 BCE, evolving from simple earth pits to more sophisticated clay domes by the New Kingdom. Yet scholars still split on whether each advance reflects gradual local tinkering or wholesale adoption of foreign blueprints. A bespectacled scribe unfurls the first scroll, its papyrus layers crackling like distant campfires. He traces his finger along a crude sketch, a pit lined with heated stones over which dough was laid, then covered with a clay lid. This represents the primordial oven, he intones, voice soft as sand slipping through fingers. Fringe sources claim some tribal communities reserved pit baking for sacred festivals only, a rite passed orally rather than inscribed. You probably won't survive this if you don't pay attention, these details underpin every loaf baked since. Another scholar, draped in a leopard skin robe denoting high temple status, unrolls scroll 2. The illustration reveals a bulbous clay chamber with an arched mouth and flue vents etched on its surface. He argues that such bell ovens mirror Mesopotamian prototypes depicted on Akkadian cylinder seals, suggesting a direct transmission of technology via trade caravans. Mainstream archaeological finds support vessels and brick fragments strikingly similar in composition to those from Elam, yet scholars still argue whether similarities stem from shared craftsmen or parallel invention. You lean forward, fingers brushing the scroll's edge. Replica ovens unearthed at Saqqara and Amarna differ subtly in clay composition, some high in Nile silt, others laced with crushed limestone. Fringe ceramicists propose that bakers deliberately altered clay recipes to adjust heat retention, almost like modern bakers tweaking oven stones for different breads. Scholars still debate whether these variations reflect experimental spirit or simple resource availability. On a low side table rests the foreign account, penned by a traveling Phoenician merchant who describes a dragon oven that exhaled heat through twin chimneys. He marveled at its ability to bake dozens of loaves in hours rather than days. You roll the scroll open and squint at its faded characters. If Phoenicians introduced twin-flue ovens, Egypt's design lineage may owe more to Mediterranean seafarers than homegrown recipes. Yet mainstream Egyptologists caution that merchant narratives often hyperbolize, scales grow wings in translation. A hush falls as a veteran scribe named Mariank stands, clearing his throat. He lays out small clay models representing each oven type, letting candlelight dance across their miniature forms. You gently pick up a model of the pit oven, noting its rough edges and lack of chimney. It feels like holding the world's first toaster, minus the pop-up. Marianka's gaze meets yours. "We must consider context," he says. "Resources, climate, and cultural exchange all shape these ovens. We cannot credit a single origin." The leopard-robed priestess counters, pointing to the Akkadian seals, we find near-identical bud-shaped ovens across Mesopotamia and the Levant predating Egyptian domes. Did not Egyptian artisans travel and learn? You tap the table softly, imagining caravans laden with grain and gossip, artisans swapping secrets beneath desert stars. Fringe historians suggest secret baker guilds carried clandestine knowledge across borders, initiating early forms of bread espionage. Scholars still argue whether these guilds existed or belong in legend. Nearby, a foreign envoy from Nubia interjects, sharing oral traditions of mobile ovens built on woven reed frames, lighter than clay, intended for pastoral communities on the move. "Ours predate all," he insists, his accent thick with desert wind. Mainstream ethnographic studies show reed-based hearths used by nomadic groups, but tangible archaeological evidence remains scarce. Scholars still debate if these mobile designs informed more permanent clay ovens or remained a separate lineage. You close your eyes briefly, letting the candles' glow wrap around your thoughts. The air hums with possibilities, local innovation, imported tactics, organic evolution, or even parallel invention across cultures. You sense that every shard of pottery, every scribbled scroll, every whispered rumor contributes to a grand tapestry of ovens, like threads weaving through time. A gentle breeze drifts through lattice windows, carrying distant sheep bells from nearby pastures. You breathe in, savoring that familiar scent of livestock and baked barley from last week's fieldwork. The scholars pause, as if taken by the lull of memory. You realize that this debate, fierce on parchment, softens in shared reflection, each perspective offering its own rhythm to humanity's oven saga. A scribe slides a small bowl of crushed clay fragments and powdered ash toward you. "Taste," he says. You dip a fingertip into the mixture, its texture gritty yet oddly smooth, and taste the mineral bitterness. "This is the clay used in New Kingdom ovens," he explains. Fringe ceramists believe the ash improved thermal shock resistance, akin to adding chamot in modern ceramics. Scholars still argue whether ash was accidental residue or deliberate additive. As the candle gutter's light softens, the group leans back, eyes half-lidded in contemplative calm. Debates will continue at dawn, but tonight the shared passion for bread's vessel unites you all. You rise, feeling the weight of multiple histories balanced in your hands: pit ovens, bell domes, reed hearths, and dragonflu myth. Each theory beckons you to explore further, to taste more of humanity's oldest inventions. You tuck the scroll fragments back into their silken cases, careful not to disturb their fragile fibers. With a final nod to Mariank and the leopard-robed priestess, you step away from the alcove, leaving the scholars to their midnight congress. The garlanded halls stretch ahead, leading you toward the courtyard where the oven embers cool, and onward to the final dimming of firelight before our gentle conclusion. You return under a navy sky to the courtyard where your oven stood sentinel, their mouths now sagging with spent breath and glowing embers. The air is cooler here, a hush settling as if the night itself draws in a slow, contented sigh. You approach the largest bell dome, its clay surface radiating the faintest warmth, just enough to remind you of the hearth's life, now ebbing like a spent heartbeat. Historians still argue whether bakers extinguished ovens daily or banked coals for morning revivals, but tonight you witness the oven's final performance, a soft, dying glow beneath soot-stained arches. With a long-handled paddle, you gently scrape the remaining crusts from the oven floor, crusty mire, each flake a testament to every loaf born here. A mainstream fact, bakers routinely repurposed these thicker edge pieces for secondary baking or animal feed, minimizing waste in a resource-scarce world. You collect several fragments, their textures ranging from glassy char to golden brown resilience. Under moonlight, they glimmer like fossilized leaves, each one whispering of heat and harvest. Nearby, apprentices ring a small bronze gong, its resonant chime marking the oven's official cool down. You probably won't survive this silence if you don't let it wash over you. The gong's echo drifts across walls and palm fronds, drawing even the sparrows to stillness. Fringe accounts suggest bakers believed the gong's vibration appeased volcanic earth spirits angered by fire's appetite, though mainstream archaeologists find scant evidence beyond anecdotal mentions. Scholars still debate whether such rituals were common or confined to fringe baker guilds. You squat beside a low brazier where coals once glowed bright, now they lie piled in ashen grey, harboring faint pockets of red. You scoop a handful, feeling the grainy warmth slide through your fingers, a fleeting comfort before it cools in the night air. You inhale the scent of wood smoke mingled with clay dust, a fragrance as old as civilization, capable of stirring memories in the deepest corners of the mind. The chief baker joins you, offering a small jar of water tempered with vinegar and ash, a cleaning solution for oven interiors. You dip a rag, wiping soot from the dome's lip, watching black residue swirl into rippling patterns. Fringe texts propose that bakers added natron salts to the mixture for antimicrobial effects, a proto-cleaning hack centuries ahead of its time. Scholars still argue whether these mixtures were routine or experimental, but the practice's efficacy endures in modern cleaning lore. A gentle wind stirs, lifting loosish into the air like phosphorescent dust. You catch a few particles on your tongue, harmless, gritty, with a whisper of earthiness. Your teeth rasp ever so slightly against the granules, reminding you of every grind and knead, flame and loaf that led here. The courtyard feels hallowed, a cathedral to transformation from grain to sustenance. You rise to your feet, brushing ash from your tunic. Shadows dance across walls carved with yesterday's reliefs, images of bakers in procession, bearing bread-like offerings to invisible gods. You place your scrape paddle against a low stake as an unspoken offering, a tool laid to rest after its vital service. Mainstream studies note that tools were often ritually retired, buried or deposited in foundation caches to bless new constructions. Fringe lore holds that some bakers buried old paddles beneath oven foundations to ensure fortuitous fires. Scholars still debate the symbolic versus practical merits of such deposits. Drawing a deep breath, you step toward the central fire pit, where a lone ember smolders. With a final nod, you let it fade into cool ash, closing the oven's chapter for this night. The courtyard's lamps gutter and dim, as if they too are surrendering to slumber. You probably won't survive this if you don't let go of every single detail, so exhale fully now, releasing the tension braided through your shoulders. Above you, the Milky Way arches in brilliant arcs, constellations mirrored in the faint iron hues of cooled clay. You look upward, sensing the continuity between sky and earth, ancient hearths and modern hearths, stories baked into every loaf. The distant call of a nightjar punctuates the silence, reminding you that life persists beyond ovens and bakeries, flowing in cycles of fire and ash. You step back, gathering the night's artifacts, crumbs in palms, ashes in rags, cooled stones in woven baskets. Each holds a fragment of memory, a tangible echo of labor and ritual. As you prepare to leave the courtyard's embrace, you pause at the threshold, the oven silhouettes framing your silhouette in a final tableau. The world feels both vast and intimate, every ember's end an invitation to new beginnings. Your footsteps are quiet on packed earth as you retrace your journey, past glimmering granaries, rippling barley fields, grinding stones now still, and kneading basins emptied of dough. Each location drifts past like pages in a well-loved book, its story concluded but ever ready to be read again. You cross the threshold where the river's moonlit shimmer guides you away from the bakery's heart, its pulse slowing into the distance. Now, let your shoulders soften as the memory of heat and labor drifts away like ember smoke. Feel the night air's cool embrace wrap around you, gentler now that flames have ebbed. Each breath you take becomes a whisper, drifting across still stones and silent ovens. You stand on the riverbank, moonlight rippling on water that has carried these grains, these stories, through the ages. Imagine the tides, ever yielding, ever patient, mirroring the tranquility that settles within your own chest. In this moment, release every tension braided into your muscles. Let fingers unclench, let the soles of your feet sink softly into imagined sand. Picture the oven's curved silhouettes receding behind you, their final glow transmuted into stars above. Your heart beats in quiet rhythm with distant drum echoes fading in memory, each thump a lullaby of centuries long past. You are both witness and part of this ancient tapestry, your presence woven into grain, clay, and flame. Now, allow the hush to deepen, elongating each syllable of this final thought, peace. Let it echo in the hollows of your mind, a soft resonance that outlasts the last ember's glow. Drift with the river's current, guided by lunar light across timeless waters. Surrender to the gentle dark, where every dream is baked slowly in the silent oven of night. Tomorrow may bring new rituals and rising suns, but for now, the world breathes with you in a collective exhale. Sweet dreams, dear traveler. Let the memory of moonlit loaves cradle you into rest, feeding both body and soul until dawn's gentle touch.